I built this tiny home after work and weekends while I was still working a full-time job 2 years ago. And I live here full-time. I've been here for a little over 4 years now. And so far so good, you know, in winter, summer, it's been quite enjoyable. So the goal for this tiny house was to basically see what is the most functional design that I could come up with in the smallest footprint, with the budget being kind of paramount because I was funding it myself and I was 26 at the time, so I didn't have a ton of savings. Yeah, and so I guess aside from just creating a really functional small space that was well thought out and would work really easily day to day, I wanted to create something that has some beauty to it. I was raised here on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia, and I started building tiny homes on the island about 4 years ago now, and really enjoying it, really enjoying having the freedom to express my creativity through my work. I wanted to build the first tiny home for myself to kind of make all the mistakes and figure out all the different methods and techniques that I would need once I got my company going. And it was a fun, challenging process, and very grateful to have it done and to have a beautiful place here to park it. So this is the Maxwell. This tiny home is 10 by 20, so 200 square feet. I knew I wanted to have a downstairs bedroom, and I knew that 10 feet would be a far more feasible option and affordable kind of layout to build to. So we're just here on the deck of my tiny home. We'll take a little walk through the outside. The roofing material is all standing seam metal. It's kind of the only roofing material I like to use because it's really high quality and you can hide all the fasteners, obviously. And then the siding is a combination of cedar channel siding. And on the front wall, we've got a nice feature with the cedar shingles here to kind of enclose this whole glazing section, I guess you could call it. Every single one was sanded and stained individually to ensure that they would last a long time and age quite well. And then a nice little roof over top of the door here to just protect the fir door from rain and weather. This is just a standard cedar deck, and it's just obviously a nice addition to a tiny home, and you can basically double your square footage with a big deck like this. When I build decks on my tiny homes, if they're a non-permanent location, then the decks are all built with sections that are at least 10 by 10, 100 square feet or smaller. So they're easily can be pulled apart. So they're easy to transport and move when the time comes to move the tiny home. And then one of my favorite features on the deck is the outdoor bathtub. I brought hot and cold water out to the outside of the tiny home so I can easily just hook up the hot water to the tub and have a nice bath and watch the sunset. I have a exterior plug mounted underneath the trailer so that I can easily run a little heat cable for the winter around that to prevent any freezing and to make sure I can have nice hot baths in the snow. So I've just built a little privacy screen to kind of block any view from the neighbors, and I basically just have trees and a view in my tiny home, and so I feel a nice sense of privacy here. So this is just my little service room for the tiny home. I wanted to kind of give it a little bit more character, so I did the funky cedar design on the front there. And that just holds my breaker panel and my hot water heater. The trailer, if I had the budget, I definitely would have been starting with a tiny home specific trailer, but I just got an old RV trailer off of a friend. And because my tiny home isn't planning to be moved off of the island or moved very often, and I did a number of construction methods to kind of reduce the weight of the building as well, so I can get away with using a lighter duty trailer and saving a large chunk of money, which was helpful when I was building this because it was my first build and was all kind of personally funded. So yeah, let's take a look inside. All right, so yeah, here we are on the inside. Nice big open concept, lots of natural light. I wanted to try and give the perception of light and space as much as possible without actually having too much of it. The tiny home itself is only 200 square feet. Over here we just got, you know, your shoes, jackets as you come in the door, dresser for all your clothes storage, some bookshelves and things underneath where I had originally planned to have a toaster oven, but don't have that yet. And then just a nice small compact functional kitchen here with the mini fridge, the sink, and then just a little propane cooktop. I like the LED accent lighting underneath the cabinets here, and that just gives the nice feel to the kitchen space when you don't want to have all the ceiling lights on. All the cabinetry is just from IKEA, just for the cost effectiveness of it. And just 6 drawers here, which is where my pantry and my food storage and cups and plates and that kind of thing. And then just, sink storage cabinet, nothing too crazy there. And then another little slot for the mini fridge. It helps when you have a deep freezer outside and you can kind of get away with a smaller fridge. Another thing I added in the kitchen, because you might not really see, there's no conventional hood fan, but I added a bathroom style fan up in the corner there because it would just draw all that moisture and steam when you're cooking, but it doesn't kind of impede the space and take up as much space as a traditional hood fan would. This countertop over here, this is a piece of arbutus, which is not a wood that I have used before, or had used before I built this. Would not recommend it. Arbutus is very difficult to keep straight and keep where you'd like it to be. It really enjoys twisting and warping and doing what it wants. So one of the things that I had to do in order to keep this countertop straight is actually install some steel U-channel underneath it. It was a little bit experimental, but it seems to be holding up quite well. And I like to have that, just a nice big natural piece of wood right as you walk into the space is a nice feature. And then over on this side, we have just a couple big opening windows and storage underneath the bench here. And then over in the end corner, we have the bed itself lifts up as well. And there's plenty of storage underneath that. And then coming into the cute little bathroom here, we've got just a standard 24-inch vanity, standard flushing toilet, and then this cedar shower that I designed as well, which was a fun kind of project to do something different in the shower, trying to keep the weight down, trying to keep with the West Coast kind of craftsmanship style. So those 3 panels can actually be removed if you want to clean them, refinish them, or anything like that down the road. And so far it's functioned quite well, and I've had a lot of compliments. It seems to be a pretty unique touch and a nice feature to the tiny home as well. The mirror I built, there are the sides. This is yew wood from a tree that fell over a few years ago. So it was nice to kind of cap the mirror with that. And yeah, just a regular kind of ceiling fan there to help with any condensation, moisture issues and things like that. And a nice cute little opening window here as well, if you need. So over here at the sleeping area, I wanted to make sure the space felt open. I didn't want to feel the need to climb up a ladder every night to get in and out of bed. So I wanted a downstairs bed. And I definitely wanted a bed where I had a nice big window next to it so I could feel like I was sleeping outside. So I came up with this design, and I could squeeze a queen size mattress in and leaving just enough space to accommodate the bathroom here. So yeah, standard queen size mattress, and then just a nice dimming LED light strip above the bed there to create a nice kind of ambiance in that space. The bed does lift up as well. There's lots of storage underneath there, so long-term stuff can stay down there. And then I got storage in these cushions as well. That might be one thing that I would change. I considered it when I was building it, putting drawers in underneath the bench rather than having just lifted up in cubbies. You do get more storage space when you just have cubbies instead of drawers, but the functionality is a lot higher with drawers. But aside from that, I'm pretty happy with how it all came out. So the main heat source in the tiny home is just electric baseboard heaters, just for ease of use. This little Dickinson Marine propane heater is a nice feature for when things get really cool in the winter or if the power goes out. And it's a nice, functional, efficient heat source for those cold winter nights. So the interior finishes in the tiny home, there's a nice kind of blend of materials in here. The ceiling is a Western red cedar with a few coats of stain on it. The wall paneling is unique in this tiny home compared to others I've built. I used this thin 1/4 inch thick pine because it would keep the weight down due to the RV trailer that I was using. I didn't want to use a traditional kind of 3/4 inch material on the inside. It's held up quite well, but I would only really be using a finish like this if I was really trying to save weight on the trailer. Just your standard 4x2 skylight up here. I just swung it the other way. Typically skylights would run kind of more vertically this way, but I liked how it fit the space. And again, just brings a ton of natural light in and really just brightens and opens up the space quite a lot. So the reason I went with the just standard kind of basic shed roof pitch here was Basically to just kind of save cost of materials. When you frame a gable, you need a lot more materials, and a shed is the simplest, kind of more approachable roof pitch. But it also just gives you a nice high ceiling. When I had everything on one floor, I knew I could bump up my ceiling height a little bit and not have to kind of worry about accommodating lofts and things like that. And trying to keep storage solutions and everything low in the space as much as possible. And that helps just, again, give the perception of light and space without actually having too much of it. I really didn't want to feel cramped, and I didn't want to feel like I was ducking into this space. So yeah, the basic structure is just standard residential construction building techniques, 2x4 construction. I built a wood frame floor deck on top of the trailer to add some structure to the trailer, as well as to get myself out to this 10-foot width. I use Roxul insulation just because you get a slightly better thermal efficiency with that than with standard fiberglass. And then in the floors, I always insulate with rigid insulation just because you could have more moisture issues down there. And this tiny home does have just Roxul insulation in the ceiling, but all my other tiny homes that I build, I use spray foam insulation just because you lose way more of your energy and your heat out of the ceiling. So the electrical plumbing is all pretty standard. No generators, no solar panels or anything like that. An off-grid tiny home is definitely something that I would like to do a design of sometime in the future, but not something I've done yet. And then the hot water heater is just an on-demand propane unit, which is good for energy efficiency. If the power goes out, you still have hot water. And then just a standard flushing toilet that's just hooked up to the septic field on the property here. So on Salt Spring Island, the tricky part is always trying to find a place to park these things or to find a place to live in general, because we always have a bit of a housing crisis here. Lucky for me, I had a friend that purchased this property and the timing just worked out well. So we kind of just created an agreement, and I've been up here for 4 years now, and yeah, absolutely loving it. One of my favorite things is I have a view of the North Shore Mountains in Vancouver off the deck and out of my bedroom window or out of the tub. So you get some really beautiful sunrises. So tiny home life has definitely been a bit of transition. I was living in campers and trailers before I moved into my tiny home, so I was definitely used to living in small spaces. But moving into a tiny home, the main difference for me is just having a really well-insulated, well-sealed space where you can come home and temperature stays nice and cozy all night long, and you don't have to wake up to turn a heater on. But living in a small space can be tricky when you have lots of hobbies like I do. So what's been really helpful is I have my little shred shed outside where I can keep all my toys. I've been working in residential construction for about 10 years before I started building tiny homes, and I saw an opportunity to provide an affordable housing solution to younger people in my generation, and then along with that to have an opportunity to express my creative vision, to have my hands on more aspects or all the aspects of a project. So I really find a lot more fulfillment in building tiny homes. I started Left Coast Tiny Homes about 4 years ago, and I have built 6 tiny homes now, and I have a few more kind of in the pipeline down the road. And the next kind of fun project that I've been wanting to get into for the past few years is building mobile saunas. But I will definitely still be building tiny homes alongside the saunas. I'm not taking a break from tiny homes at all. So far, I've been pretty happy with the design, with how everything kind of turned out and how it's been functioning day to day for me. And just in terms of living in tiny homes, I think it just simplifies your life and you focus on what you really need and what you really don't need. And I think that that's a really helpful and beneficial lifestyle to have.
Subscribe to Exploring Alternatives and check out our playlists for more tiny home tours like this. You can also follow Noah and Left Coast Tiny Homes on Instagram and on his website. Thanks for watching.